I just wanted to read the dedication in my new book, The Look, a special message to all the people out there who help make us feel our best. To all the people behind the scenes of fashion and beauty who use their expert hands and creative gifts to make us feel our best. You sit behind machines, hemming and beading. You stand on your feet for hours, braiding, locking, twisting, cutting, and coloring. You focus intently as you meticulously pluck and wax, as you contour and highlight. Your work is a gift that does not go unnoticed, one that takes many forms. A compliment we receive, a jolt of electricity we feel from a mirror looking back at us, a sturdier belief in ourselves and the things we might do. Thank you for your dedication, your artistry, and your patience. Thank you for you. And I want to give a special thank you to my personal team, Meredith Coop, Yanae Damtu, Carl Ray, and Jerry Radway. Thank you for always seeing the me behind the First Lady. When I think back to how much has changed over the course of my life, from straight-A student to outsider at an Ivy League college, to lawyer and mom, to the First Lady of the United States, I see how my clothing choices have helped me define each role. I also see how my perspective about my appearance has evolved over the years. Some days we put on armor, the chic silk jumpsuit you might wear to face an ex, or when reconnecting with your old classmates at a high school reunion. Some days we slip into a costume, or what may feel like one, such as the brand new power suit bought for your first job interview, or for those special life moments like your wedding. And other days, maybe most days, we find ourselves in sweats or jeans and one of the dozens of t-shirts or sweaters folded in the dresser. Whatever the ordinary or extraordinary events that await, we dress for the journey.
Good evening. My name is Tamira Chapman, and it is a privilege to be seated for this conversation that reaches across generations and borders. This moment honors the ancestors that came before us, the team that walks alongside of us, and young people that are developing a sense of what self looks like in this moment. Ms. Obama,
Michelle, first of all.
No.
Okay, all right.
You are not going to get us in trouble on the internet
With all
today. Please,
Okay,
please.
okay.
We don't
Whatever
want
you're
that kind of
comfortable
smoke on the internet today. You have earned the dignity of our forever FLOTUS, Miss Obama, and we wish to confer that upon you.
Thank you.
So we'll leave it to your friends, other friends, to call you Michelle, but not us today. We first had an opportunity to connect when you were releasing Becoming, and then we had an opportunity to interview you for The Light We Carry. And now for us to be able to convene again for The Look really just means the world to us. I had an opportunity to share earlier, and I'm going to try not to cry, but because this is a book about the look, and we have all of our teams here should something go wrong. I'm okay. But I had an opportunity to share that you went through great lengths during our conversation with The Light We Carry to share that you are not an anomaly, that when you look at the community of Black women, you perceive us all to be excellent, and you perceive us all to be powerful, and that we really needed to show up and own that moment. And at the conclusion of our event, you were kind enough to share back with our friends over at Penguin Random House that you enjoyed our conversations and that it meant a lot to you.
Yes.
And Penguin Random House's response to that was, if there's anything we could ever do to support you, Tamira, let us know. And I thought about your words, and I thought about how in our community, we are likely to have more than just readers. Yeah. We likely have some potential authors too, but we don't know how to demystify the publishing pipeline. Amen. And so when PRH said, is there anything we can do to support you? I said, how about helping me develop a program that demystifies publishing for Black women? And that simple comment from you, validating our work publicly, and a subsequent conversation we had with them led to us launching Storehouse Voices, which has become a publishing powerhouse. And we have already educated over 10,000 women on becoming published authors. We have organized hundreds of meetings with agents, and we have signed almost 50. And we've managed to do the majority of that work in under a year. Wow. And that is all attributed to you and you validating us and giving us an opportunity in the moment. It's my belief that from now to the end of time, you have planted so many seeds that for generations and generations, we will all bear the fruit. And so from the bottom of my heart, I just want to say thank you for that.
Okay, you are trying to mess me up at the beginning of this conversation, but that's what a blessing. But it's cracking a door open for the excellence that already exists. Because let me tell you, people don't do anybody favors, right? I mean, this whole Nepo baby affirmative action, it's not a thing that's ever been the reason for any of our success. A lot of it is just getting a seat at the table and then allowing your excellence to shine in its natural God-given self. So what was accomplished through the hard work, effort, intelligence, and ability and capability of the women who made it happen. And PRH was smart enough to make a place for that to be. So I'm so proud of you all for what you have done, what you will continue to do. I have looked forward to coming back. I am so glad we've moved from a conversation to a Zoom to a being here in person, and maybe the next time we can do it live in a room full of women, because this feeds me in the same way that it feeds you all. So thank you. Thank you for continuing to bless me with the honor of being a part of this community.
Thank you so much, Ms. Obama.
Yeah.
And we are joined by two brilliant women who are lending their expertise to our conversation. And I would just love it if they each would introduce themselves. Kinna?
Absolutely. I'm Kinna Thomas, and I am a corporate retail executive. I've had the pleasure of working for some amazing companies, developing products, coming up with what customers need, and making sure that we are at the forefront of innovation. And one of the things that I'm most known for is creating the Patti LaBelle sweet potato pie.
Patty pie.
But following my other interests, I also have a community-based group that is called Black Women Who Love Fashion. And it's about 100,000 of us, and we are each other's hype squad. Just giving positive energy about how to dress and what looks great, and just giving feedback from that standpoint. And it's been absolutely a true honor to read the look, because it resonated so well with me, given some of the scrutiny that you face in corporate America, especially people who look like me. So thank you for that, and I am so honored to be here.
Oh, wonderful. Congratulations.
Kahlana?
I am Kahlana Barfield Brown. I am a longtime fashion and beauty editor. I spent over a decade at InStyle magazine, and I am now the owner and designer of KBB by Kahlana. This is KBB by Kahlana. Do you recognize the pants? Yes, so KBB by Kahlana is a new fashion brand that is available now, and it was inspired by the power and the beauty of women owning their personal styles. So it is an honor to be here. I have followed your style, written about your style my entire career. So to be here with you is such an honor.
Well, this is the perfect panel. I think we're all here.
Yes, we are here.
So it's wonderful. Great to be with you all.
Thank you so much. So let's just get into the look right away.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. You started off by talking about when President Obama was first elected to this U.S. Senate seat. Mm-hmm. And you said, I'm still working, and I'm taking care of the girls, and I'm running to the meetings, and on your lunch break, you're like, oh, Lord, let me try to run out and get something to wear from a department store. And then, he wins, and you continue to follow this theme. And then you get a call from Oprah, and she's just like, hey, we're getting ready to do a shoot. It's a spread. And you're like, what am I getting ready to wear? And then, I really appreciated how at the end, Oprah was kind enough to send over the 2 Ralph Lauren suits and a collection of the cable knit sweaters.
I was Oprah'd.
You get an outfit. You get an outfit.
That's just what it felt like. They just kept coming. It's like, oh my God.
What did she do? What was it like in that moment, and when did it finally click where it's just like, oh my God, I'm doing the best that I can do to try to figure this out, but I quickly need help. Yeah. So what was the realization for you in that moment?
Whew. My husband's political ascent was slow and then a rocket. Right. And for so long, most of his political career, he had his career and I had my career. Because in the midst of all of this, we had our girls, they were growing up. I was, in a flexible work situation because I was trying to figure out that balance of being a new mother and not being able to give 120% at the office. But the girls were just getting to the stage where they were in school, they were settled, everybody went to the bathroom by themselves, and it felt like I was ready to reclaim my career. Yeah. So I was a vice president in charge of community development at the University of Chicago hospitals. I had a big job, a big life, and my husband, okay, you have these things going on, but, we operated in our own lanes in terms of career. So his stuff was like, you have when you're busy and your husband has a work event and you're like, oh my God, I totally forgot about that. I have to be with you when you go to the DNC and give that speech. Yes. Oh, I have to go on stage with you. And I need something to wear. So that was primarily how it went until he decided to announce, and I had to campaign, and my campaign schedule started to increase more and more and more, and I was still working full time. So when I would campaign, my day, for the days I'd be up, I'd get up at 5:30 in the morning, go to the hairdresser, at
first things first.
5:30 in the morning, because I was like, I can't be out here in Iowa. I had my perm and my press, so we had to get that done. I got on a plane. My mother was home with the girls. I would go to Iowa. I'd do 5-6 rallies. Boom, boom, boom. Get on the plane. Last plane home. Try to get home by dinner for the girls because he wasn't there. He was campaigning all the time. So I knew that I just wanted to be there for the girls so that their day felt the same.
Yes.
They went to school, they came home, mom, grandma were there, dad sometimes. So this didn't interfere with them. That was my life until I started campaigning more and more and more, and I thought, I don't have time to run to the department store every time I need something on. I don't have time to have clothes be an issue. I've got to have a plan so that clothes become second nature, so that I can be me fully in these spaces and the clothes become the uniform. But as we all know, the uniform has to look good.
Right.
It has to fit. And me being 5'11" with long legs, I am not an off the rack kind of woman. That's when I met Maria Pinto.
Yes.
And I understood that, wow, having somebody that can fit you, dress you, just get some looks together that fit and work and can mix and match, that helped in that campaign setting. So that was the beginning of me realizing I just physically can't do this.
Right.
And I have to make clothes become secondary to the work. And in order to do that, as we all know, you have to have a plan.
Right.
Yes.
You know, to make something look easy requires a strategy.
There's a strategy for that.
And we all understand that. And I say that I was doing what every other working woman was doing, except everybody was watching.
Yes.
You know,
The hot public gaze.
that's the only difference. So I think we all, as professional women, have our own strategy to get through, because we have to show up looking our best, because that's the first thing people see.
Yep.
You know, and I knew as a professional that I had to be polished, clothes had to fit, they had to cut the way they needed to cut, and I needed to have flexibility. And Maria Pinto was the first designer that I worked with out of Chicago that helped make my life so easy during that time. And God bless you, Maria.
You say, which camera?
Yeah, right.
God bless you, Maria.
So that was the beginning of that notion that in order to be in this space, I need a strategy.
Right.
It's interesting to actually even hear you say when you started campaigning 5, 6, 7 times.
Yeah.
What was that like for you? I mean, because you literally are transitioning from law to like right on a campaign trail. Like, what even prepared you to be able to say yes to that?
Well, it was once I said yes to Barack running,
That was it.
I knew that I couldn't just, that this was it was a joint effort, you know, that there was no way that he could do this. Like I didn't really campaign in his Senate race or his U.S. Senate race, but the presidency, it was a different thing. It was historic. And I knew that it would be important for me to be out there for us to be able to double and triple our effort. So it sort of began with me doing what I did. I thought, well, how am I going to land in Iowa, the middle of Iowa, as a black woman named Michelle Obama? You know, how am I going to connect with people? And what I knew connected all of us at that time, it wasn't what I looked like, it wasn't what I was wearing, it wasn't my profession and my degrees, it was my story. And I was like, if you want to know Barack Obama, then you have to know our story. And where does that begin? It began on 74th and Euclid with Marion Fraser and Anne and Stanley Dunham. And I talked to people about what our lives were like, what we valued, what we cared about, how we showed up in the world, what mattered. You know, I told stories about how we met and about who my father was, because I was like, if you want to know me, then you got to know Fraser Robinson. And we're working class people, you know, and that's how I began to shape my stump speech, you know, because it began pretty gradually. You start out, you're new. Nobody knows who the Obamas are. So I started out campaigning in people's living rooms, just like this, just sitting down, having this kind of conversation, and talking about what we cared about, talking about our kids, talking about the sacrifices that we make, the things we learned from our parents as hardworking people, so that they would see us beyond what we look like.
Right.
Yes.
And people, this is the beauty about story, people connect to story. And I don't care where I was, that story, you saw people starting like this, and then they would relax, and they would nod, and they would understand the food we ate, our rituals, our connection to God, all of that began to shape those conversations. So you start in a living room, and then you move to a backyard, and then you move to a church basement. And then before I knew it, 6 months in, I was filling gymnasiums and arenas. And so things just start to grow. And I just landed in Iowa and said, you got a day. So tell me where you want me to go and what you want me to say. And it just got bigger and bigger and bigger from there.
Wow. Great.
And then now we're here.
Now we're here with this amazing book. Let's talk a little bit about it. It is beautifully curated, has all of these amazing pictures, which I have spent a lot of time thumbing through those pictures and bookmarking, like I'm going to recreate this look. I'm going to show up in my best Miss Obama, right? And so at any rate, you talk a lot in the book about confidence and authenticity. So as we think about that, what advice would you give to everyday women to reclaim their style again?
Yeah. I think it starts with reclaiming the love of who we are as we are, period. Before the hair and the makeup, before all the shoes and clothes, it starts from here. And that is forever work. And I tell us as women of color, that it's hard because we live in a society that makes it hard for us. We're not crazy. I mean, working on confidence in a society that doesn't see you and value you. And again, I'm talking about us as women of color, but women in general. It is a constant fight to grow up in a culture that is male dominated to this day, regardless of our advances. There's still a lot of putting women in their place, and there are places for us, and where our value comes from and how we're measured, and a lot of it is still external. And then the images are so limited of what is considered beautiful and acceptable. That's not made up. So the fact that it takes some work to retain that sense of self that people start beating out of you from the time you were a little girl, it's work, right? But it all begins there. For us getting to the point where, first of all, I just love where I have to learn to love where I am right now. And then if you work with that part of yourself, then you start taking care of that person. Then you can embrace your shape, your figure. And instead of following some trend, which I don't believe in, now I love a trend. I do.
You set off a few.
I love a look, and if I see something that I think is cute and I want to rock it, I rock it. But it starts with, how does it make me feel? How does it look on me? I'm not going to wear the see-through look. With my underwear out and I'm just, I'm still betwixt and bewildered about that aspect of where fashion has gone. I'm like, so you have on no clothes. I'm not going to do that, Shirley. Not for me. Probably never would have ever been for me at any point in time. So I think, I would caution people, women, to find what works for them and what makes them feel comfortable and good, right? And so if showing your arms is something that makes you feel good, then do it, right? But if you don't like showing your arms, well, don't follow me, It's okay. Find the thing that works for you. And so I think that's my advice. But it starts with the work that we have to do inside. And I don't know about you guys, I have 2 girls, and I am trying to every day undo what society does to them. I've started at a very young age, making sure that they know that they're valued and loved and respected and that they're beautiful. And I tell them that, their father tells them that, so that they begin that work early. So I think that's what we have to think about, is what are we pouring into the young girls coming up? That sense of you are enough. Every stitch of you is enough the way you are today. And then go from there.
That's really solid. That's really solid advice. As I think about the fact that I've lost 150 pounds.
Wow.
And there is a significant difference in how I was treated then, even in a work environment, versus now. Right? So it's very important that I understand what some of those differences are, and that I still show up as my full self, and just making sure to pour into others, because we all need to carry that. So thank you.
Well, and it starts with pouring into ourselves, because what we're good at already is pouring into others.
That's right.
That's our mothers taught us that, our grandmothers taught us that. We watched them pour and pour and pour until they had nothing left. And I think part of our work is honoring that,
powerful.
Honoring that, because that is a part of who we are, those givers, those nurturers, the mothers, the sisters. But we do have to, balance that out with more filling ourselves up and being okay with it, putting us, as I've said time and time again, higher up on our priority list. Maybe we can't be number one on our own list, but we sure better be 2 or 3. And the older I get, the more I'm pushing myself to 1.
One of the things that I love so much about the look was that your wardrobe choices all had so much meaning behind them. And as someone who covered your wardrobe choices throughout the 8 years you were in the White House, my question to you is how intentional you were about the cultural language that your clothing spoke. And were there ever times when the symbolism of the clothing mattered more than anything, even more than like your personal style preferences?
No, there definitely there was intentionality and purpose, and I think that was true because for both Barack and myself, understanding the power of the position and the rarity of having people like us, not just our color, but our background. We're working class kids, both of us, from families that, we weren't networked into these positions. We didn't know anybody, and that's not always the pathway to power.
Right.
So we understood that everything we did in this position had to have meaning. It had to have purpose, because what were we there for?
Right.
As we said, that the White House, it was not our house. We occupied it, but it's the people's house. So if you start there, and I think it helped that I had a husband that was very clear in his vision as commander-in-chief why we were doing this and what this was for. It was easy not to lose sight of it in every single thing we did. How can we say something more? How can we open the aperture of possibility up for everyone? The other thing that helped was that we didn't get here by ourselves. Barack Obama's campaign were small grassroots folks at tables getting excited, young people. We didn't get there from the top down. We got there from the bottom up. So we felt an obligation that in everything we did, it should say something, that nothing was frivolous, not an event, not a word, choosing our words, how we spoke, how we showed up. It mattered because we were representing the nation. In many parts, people saw us as representatives in the world. Right? So clothing was just another opportunity, right? It wasn't even a tool, it's just an opportunity, right? And I started thinking about, okay, the first major decision of the First Lady is who's going to dress her for the inauguration, right? Big deal.
Yes.
But there was an expectation of what had been done.
Right.
Well, Oscar de la Renta generally dressed and generally did this and generally did that. And the first thing I thought was, well, he got to do it a lot.
Somebody else's turn.
And you're Oscar. Like you don't need the glow.
Right.
You're there already, right? You've had your turn.
Yes.
And this will just be another feather in your cap. But what about people who are just starting to put their caps on? Wow, what would this mean for a Jason Wu, a young immigrant, and the story, his story, just like story for me, mattered. Like the stories of the designers I wore mattered to me, and how they showed up in the world mattered to me, because it's like who I'm wearing, it says something. Right. So Jason's story, his craft, the fact that, and I tried on a bunch of different dresses, but when I put his on, I felt like I knew I wanted to feel that night. Light and fresh and clean and glowy. And that dress, I put it on,
Accomplished.
right?
Stunning.
And I was like, then this is it. Dress, story, purpose, all of it. Wow. You know, let's do this. It was clear from there. And so once I started understanding, like I wear something and people start noticing it, so that they'll start noticing the people who are doing the work. So who else needs an opportunity? Who else needs a glow up? Who else do we need to know about? There are all these young Black designers, young designers, immigrant designers, women designers, up and coming designers. Wearing them could change their life. It says something more about who we are as a country. All of that was purposeful. So why not go for it? And even wearing J.Crew and Target.
Accessible.
You know, because it's like, we weren't rich, we weren't poor. You can't live in the White House with no money. But, you know, I had a husband who was like, how much was that?
Look away. Look away,
Look
sir.
away. Not for 4 to 8 years.
Right. Look away.
But I was still a woman on a budget, you know? And wearing a beautiful Target dress.
Right. I mean,
You know, that
my
was
brand
like,
is exclusively sold at Target. And the purpose behind that was that I wanted people to be able to have access.
yes.
I could have easily went after being this huge luxury designer, but if I could make clothes that are luxury, the best materials, and have it at an attainable price point that people can actually have access to it, then I'm, you know, I have meaning and purpose in my work. And that was my goal as well.
And you've been rewarded with that. Well, how many sold out collections?
Oh my gosh.
We are
It's so
chomping at
great.
the bit
Yes.
to get all the pieces. And so proud of you.
Thank you so much.
For being able to do that. and just stand
Absolutely.
it.
Absolutely.
And I think just back to Miss Obama's point, it's just like you have an opportunity, you're in the door, they see your excellence.
Yes.
And now look
That's
at what
right.
you've made possible for so many people.
Right.
To do
And
the same
let me
thing.
just say, I wore clothes that I loved, that made me look good, that were good quality. I never skimped. I never did a favor.
Right.
You know, people, Black folks sent me stuff. I was like, I'm not wearing that. I love you. Not yet. Not just yet.
Not
You
just
know,
yet.
so I wasn't doing anyone a favor.
Yes.
You know, I wore things that I loved, that I felt good in, that were beautiful, and also said something.
Yes.
Right.
So let me tell you, I did not do it. You know, I cared about how I looked.
Exactly.
You know, I wasn't going to experiment at a state dinner. You know, I wasn't going to show up. Well, let me see what you can do.
Oh my goodness. You know, I'm sitting here having a real time revelation with you. And I've always just thought that nothing is ever wasted with God. So when I look back over my life, I can just see his hand and like all the things, especially being a little ways out now. And, you know, I spent the time reading the look. And this conversation is about, you know, how you unlock so many opportunities, like for this team that you developed, for these designers. But I'm realizing that you and President Obama, this is just your standard. This is who you are. So this is not limited to just this, because what you did with fashion is the same thing that you did for us in terms of that conversation, in terms of this publishing house. So I'm like real time having an aha moment here. I'm like, okay, like this is what MO does. Got it. And I started thinking about your mom. And you talked about how your mom was so practical.
Yes.
And, you know, you had your one time a year where you go shopping for your back to school clothes. And then when we look at that now and we start to compare it to these other moments, it's just like when you're on the book tour, you come out with the boots. You've got to, like, how did you even reconcile that moment? And were there times when mom was like, what are we doing here? Like, how did she, you know, like, what did that feel like?
That's a great question. I mean, I think one of the most beautiful things about this journey we've been on, and it is a journey from 74th and Euclid to today, is watching my mom on that journey with us. You know, I mean, and my mother, very practical, but she is also in awe of it. Like she was never the kind that took it for granted. You know, she would pretend like, well, this is nothing. And then she'd get in and be like, well, look at this. Well, isn't that something? You know? So she enjoyed it all. She did. She enjoyed the gold boots and the, you know, she was here for it. Now, it wasn't her, you know, she was still, you know, my mother was still pretty modest and, you know, it was fun. Meredith would style her when we would travel and, you know, and she would have her little fitting with Meredith and she just loved Meredith and thought, look, can you imagine? Everything was just amazing. Did you see my pants? Meredith picked them out. I was like, yeah, Mom, you got something going on. So
Mom, you going viral tonight.
And she never took anything for granted. And that kept us grounded.
Yes.
She still came in with that kind of awe. She was never took anything for granted. And so she kept us clear that this is pretty cool. And it is different. And we've come a long way.
Yes.
You know, the only thing we think about, and this will get me, is that my father didn't get to see it.
Oh, he sees it. He saw
does.
all of it.
That is so true.
All of it.
Yes.
And it is because of him that so much of it was made possible.
Right.
Because you've had a chief angel bending God's ear on your behalf.
Well, and he has done some miracles for us and kept us protected in the midst of it. So yeah, my mom was in awe. We never took anything for granted, but after a while, it is a job.
Yeah.
You know, and you still can't. I didn't have as I described in our state dinner nights, which was sort of like our date nights, we had a ritual of how I would get ready. Barack wouldn't know what dress I was wearing. You know, the team would be around, the girls would come down, and then I'd walk out, and it would be like prom every time, you know. And it was just like, it's our date. And then all the butlers would gather around because they'd want to see, and Meredith and the team, the trifecta, would come out and look at Barack's face because they wanted, we want to see a tear.
Yes.
We want to see a jaw on ground, you know. So everybody got a kick out of that, right? And that was every state dinner where it just became Mom and Dad, you're getting dressed up, little Barbie dolls, and go out there with the people, you know. So we've tried not to take these things for granted and to try to enjoy some of those moments and sit in the wonder and the blessing of it.
Yes.
For sure.
That's amazing. When
Picture.
That's exactly it. So we had a brief conversation earlier today as we were thumbing through pictures. You have to find it. She's going to find the picture. There's a picture where Barack is looking at you and he is so proud.
Like you are a
He
snack.
is like, I know that she is so gorgeous and this is my gorgeous woman. But we could tell those moments where he's just beaming with pride to have you on his side. Beautiful, smart, impactful, and all of those really awesome things. So we were talking about that earlier.
There it is.
There it is.
You couldn't tell him nothing.
Nothing. Look at him.
He like, do you see my date? Do you see it? Do you see the material?
Queen.
Do you see the material? So this tickled us. Oh, and for our audience at home, we are referring to this page inside of the look. Yes, you were officially a snack and a date this night.
Well, you know, and when it comes all down to it, I'm dressing for my man too.
Yes,
You know?
Yes.
you are.
So, you know, deep down, you know, I look in the mirror and I'm sort of like, you know, I'm cute. And so there's
He
that.
said, "You are fine," is what he told the people recently. He said, "You know, Michelle is fine too."
Yeah.
Those were the words.
So we can't ignore the fact that if we're lucky enough to have someone that we love in our life, the fact that how we show up in the world brings them a special something.
Yes.
Yeah, that's all a part of it too, you know. At a time when my husband's struggling with hard problems and, you know, things aren't going right. He's got the literal weight of the world on his shoulder. You know, the fact that he can take time and just bow down to me and our relationship and our love and our beauty and our friendship, all of that. Yeah. And wearing something cute while you're doing it.
Yes. When we think about some of the moments that you talked about living in, I started thinking about designers of color. Like when you wear their stuff, they have to be like, right? And kind of holding their breath and like trying to take it all in, right? The fact that you are the person that is wearing something that they curated or came up with or designed or developed. What can everyday women be doing to support designers of color?
Oh, the fashion industry, it's tough.
Yes,
It's a hard business. It really is. I mean, to develop and put out a line of clothes,
It's tough.
it is a tough business. And so, I think we can be mindful, and be knowledgeable about who is out there, who's doing good work, and I think conversations like this, what you're doing, I think it's, if I hear of someone whose fashion that I like and I know that they're a person of color, I try to make it a point. But the clothes have to be available. Designers have to be able to keep their businesses in line long enough to have their stuff on the shelf. So
Right.
this is one of the reasons why during my time I tried to lift up the industry, because they don't exist and we don't have their stuff if we're not supporting them. And it costs a lot of money to develop and put out a line. And if you can't afford to show at Fashion Week and then there's the inventory and how much do you make? I mean, it is a
Size
complicated,
range.
the size range. I think, doing some work to educate ourselves in this, because we're so into fast fashion, because we're also trying to be economical too.
Right.
So everybody's on a budget. We are struggling in this economy right now. Designers of color are the first people to get hit. Women, smaller businesses, people who have not been established, who can't weather the storm. So I think part of it is that we have to be mindful about it, but we're also limited in what we can do if we're limited.
That's right.
So it's a conversation, I guess. And I think what you all are doing in your fields to just highlight who they are so that we know that they're there and we know what they're doing. And try to make sure that we're supporting, that we have a balance in who we wear, what we do. And I still try to do that. Look, I've worn Chanel, I've worn Sergio Hudson, and I've worn...
We'll get to that.
Yes.
And I've worn J.Crew.
Yes.
Yes.
And
Target.
And Target. And I think even as we are thinking about our strategies and our looks, I think we can all do some work to think about that balance in our wardrobes. What does our closet look like and who's in it? Who are we supporting in it?
Right.
And I think if you have the money to buy Chanel, then you have the money to buy everybody.
Right.
And so let us be mindful, I think would be my advice.
Yeah. I just love how intentional you were, and you gave global visibility to so many small emerging designers of color, just small designers. How did you go about, I know that one, you really do care about the story, but was there anything else in particular that you looked in a designer that you chose to support?
First of all, shout out to Meredith Coop, my stylist. Young woman, she was a baby when she came. I was lucky enough to have somebody, the team of people that work with us in our lives and work with us in the White House. Part of being in our team is understanding the top-down message too. And so I had the blessing and the luxury, which is I didn't even know what a stylist was until I had to have one, right? But for me, Meredith did that research, right? That's another advantage, right?
Yes.
She was actively out there in the world in the conversation. I didn't have time to do that. I didn't know who Tracy Reese was. I was writing speeches and launching initiatives, but the person that I charged with it understood, let me learn about this world and all of it and the politics behind it. So when you think about what else that we looked at, it wasn't just race, color, but it was also, is a designer currently in some mess? Just to put it, because sometimes some people, that's like, it's messy now there. Let me stay away from that because there's mess over there. You know, the way people showed up in the world. I would learn this from Meredith. You know, her interactions with their teams and who they were as people. And if I heard that somebody was rude to my staff, but nice to me, not good with their people, I would feel a kind of way. Yes. Now, we couldn't figure that out. But let me tell you, if I heard that somebody was rude or unkind or small-minded, I would be less inclined to work with them. And I know people are different around me. So a lot of times it's the story after I'm gone that is interesting to me. And not that I'm asking for that report, but you're just listening and my ears perk up and it's like, who said that? They said what? To who and when? You know, that kind of stuff matters too. Character, you know, how you show up in the world, you know, all of that kind of stuff mattered for me with the people that we work with on all levels. Couldn't do, you know, wasn't perfect all the time, but we were mindful. And then in terms of design, the more complicated styling were for our international trips. There was a lot that went into thinking about the wardrobe, oftentimes for me, my mother, and the girls when we traveled abroad, because I tried to go abroad when I could take the girls on their breaks. So it was usually all of us, right? And so what were the colors of a country that meant something? What statement were you making? Could you, if you're going to visit a mosque, you have to cover your arms. If you're visiting the Pope, you have to cover your hair. If you're in certain places, you cover your knees. You know, the cultural norms. I was never going to wear the costume of another culture. I wasn't going to show up in a sari if I didn't wear a sari. You know, I wasn't going to put on someone else's clothes, but Meredith did a good job of making sure that the designer, the American designer that made the belt, was Indian American. You know, she would be thinking along those lines. And as we got, and I was very committed to always wearing American designers when I was First Lady, because this is who I'm representing. But once I left, I was able to think, I thought more broadly, started to wear more European, African designers. We did a beautiful trip to South Africa recently, and Meredith did an amazing job of finding some really just off the chain South African designers that I sported, and looks that were amazing. One of my favorite looks was a designer, and I'm going to forget the name, but designed a pantsuit with a print that had my mother's face on it. So the print was a picture of my mother all over this silk two-piece,
so beautiful
pantsuit that I was like, how did you find this person? Right? So post White House, I was able to branch out a little bit more. And so the international piece of it requires a lot of thought. When we're at Buckingham Palace, you know, you got to wear to glove or not to glove. You know, I mean, we would have hour-long back and forth conversations with the State Department of what is required, what is going to be an insult, you know, who can I touch, what can I wear, you know, because you don't want to make your clothing the story when the point of the trip is something bigger than that. So oftentimes getting fashion right in a foreign setting means you don't create a conversation. You know, if you do not want your shoes to be the headline.
Right.
That was always a miss.
Right.
It was like, if they talking too much about my shoes, it's a problem.
Right.
What did it feel like for you to coalition and build this team? Because when we read the look, we hear about the stories of Meredith. You know, you having your initial interview with her. There's Carl, there's Najiri, there are all the people that eventually come and join the squad. So what did it feel like for you to coalition build at that point? Did you feel vulnerable? Like, I'll have to do this work to convince these people to come and join my team and help keep me together? Like, how did that?
That's a good question. Wow. No, it never felt like an interview. For whatever reason, it just seemed like things happened. And it was like, okay, all right, come here. Yo, sit here.
Yeah.
Do you work hard? Do you show up on time? Well, let's see. You know, because my whole thing with interviewing, it's like, anybody can interview well.
Right.
But
I need to see what you can do.
exactly.
You see
Who
this
are
work
you
ethic.
in the space? So sometimes you've got to take the chance to open up. It's just like we are in life. Because a lot of people say, oh, you know, how do you make new friends? Right? It's the same way. It's like you got to be open enough to let people in and let them show you who they are, and not be afraid to get hurt or be disappointed.
Right.
You know.
Good.
Yeah.
And then they will show you, right? and then it's clear. It's like, oh, you can't be here.
Right.
Another day.
Right.
You know? And it's just rare, because I think we were the kind of folks that people were trying to show up for. Like that I always knew. I've never worked with anyone who wasn't trying to show up for this mission. This was a big cause, and so many of us, all Americans, felt a part of it. And I think all my team came knowing that this was this wasn't about hair and fashion. This was bigger.
That's right.
This was a bigger thing. And if you didn't get that, if you wanted to be a celebrity stylist, then this isn't the place for you, because we're not even talking about you. Right? And as we know, like, this whole scene of beauty and style and makeup has become a thing. Well, no. The work is the thing.
Right.
Like, we are doing what we're doing right when it isn't the thing.
Yes.
If fashion and beauty becomes the thing and it's not these girls I'm standing in front, it's a problem, which is why we didn't write the book until now. The work came first. And so finding people who understood that assignment and embraced it.
Mission aligned.
Yeah, I think it just made it became apparent. You know, you learn people.
Yes.
So there was some vulnerability of letting people in, but we have nothing to hide. No, you can come in. See, we ain't doing nothing. Not much going on. It's like, it's dinner, the girls come in, Barack shows up, and it's like, what's happening? And that's it. And we're working, and there's no, you know, there's nothing to hide. Come on in, you know, because you'll leave with, there's not a story, there's not a, you know, there's not a scandal, people aren't rude, we are who we are. So I've never been afraid of letting people in. And I think that's what allows you to have a team, because you trust them. And then you let people show you who they are. And I was rarely disappointed. You know, even people that didn't work out forever and forever still were there for the right reasons.
Right.
You know, and I think that's where heart, purpose, intent, you know, I believe people, if you give people what you want back, that it's a mutual respect, love, appreciation, gratitude. You know, I think we give that out, and I think I know we got it back in abundance. You know, just in abundance. I mean, people who enter our world, we say it's like the vortex. You come in and you never leave. You might leave, but we never let you go.
Yes.
Not fully, right? So these people, this is my family.
Yes.
These are my children. These are like my other children. So many of my sisters, right?
Right.
People are in your space, in your life for that long. So that develops over time.
So a lot of what you've been talking about really does deal with trust, right? As well as leadership. Because you have to be so powerful to say, like, I'm just going to let you do your job. And I'm okay with you doing the job that I'm giving you to do because I trust you. Right? So in those moments where we go out and we seek the help that we need, just as people, just leaning into some of those trust factors becomes super important. So as your journey through the White House, other than the fact that like you've hired an amazing team of people, what other sort of things were you looking for just to continue to advance this strategy that you had behind styling, if you will?
Smarts, courage, right? I mean, when I think about how, take Yanae. Yanae was assisting Johnny, right, who was my primary hairstylist in the White House. She started out as his assistant, and she was studying to get her degree, doing her homework while she was doing the girls' hair. She was 20.
Like somebody else we know.
You know, so it's as much of a joy to me to watch her grow in that job. To just sort of be like, look at what you're doing. Look at you operating and showing up on time. And I don't even know how you got from that parking space into this hard place. Every day, these are kids getting up, showing up at the White House, coming, and you know they're getting stopped or something's happening, but they never, their energy, you know, they didn't bring that energy into it. They were mature enough to be able to manage through it. I just think you see you see that in people, you know, and you got to give people a chance to grow through it. And I'm not saying people didn't make mistakes and didn't have to get, and I'm a stern mother, sister, you know, it's like, we're not going to pretend like it didn't happen. Right. We will talk about it. We're going to learn about it. And I love you and let's work on it, you know, so. I think what you said is it is trust and leadership in the trust, you know, and showing people that they're capable and letting them get to the point where they believe it. Right. I mean, there's so many assistants that you could tell, you know, like one of my assistants, Kristen Jones, I love you, babe. She was my aide and she started out as an intern. And I think immediately she became my assistant, my body person. For almost a year, she walked around with a worried look on her face. Like she thought she was messing up every day, you know? And I was just like, you have got to learn to believe in yourself. Yeah, you have made some mistakes, but you're going to have to start believing that you belong here, you know, and giving them time. So sometimes it takes time for people to grow into their power. So you also have to sometimes stick with people, you know, and let them work it out, you know. So if somebody didn't make a colossal mistake of meanness, unkindness, something so, and it's just weird that people do that. Nobody was stealing, nobody lied, nobody went and did something that they weren't supposed to do. These are all just these are growth points. And so, like for me, in my mentoring and training of people, it is all about, okay, you are gonna have to grow into it, which means you're going to make mistakes, and doing it right isn't about never making a mistake.
Right.
You know? And so there's constant mentoring when you have young people. It's like their conversations while makeup is going on and what happened. Let's sit down and talk about that. And why are there tears? And what do we, you know, it's not like it's not work when you work with young people. But when you invest,
Yes.
Oh my God.
The returns.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And I tell them now to this day, y'all were 20-something years old. You guys were babies doing this work. Like balling up in places, going to foreign countries, figuring stuff out. And I'm not just talking about my style team, but these teams that worked with us in the White House, these were kids.
Right.
But they did it. They showed up. So I have faith in that growth and development. And now even more so because I tell people the stakes are lower. You know, we can make a lot of mistakes and it will not affect the world. So let's just have some fun. You know, everyone can make a little mistake. So I just love the process of mentoring and birthing and raising and supporting. I love watching the outcome and watching young people grow into their power. That's like, ooh, that's a gift.
Yeah. I also just from the look, I love how you said their names and how they were, you mentioned them, you say their names, you dedicated chapters to them. I think that that's so commendable because for me, coming as a former beauty editor, it was literally my job to highlight and celebrate the glam teams behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And it was so rare because for so long, you know, it was almost like this discretion thing where they're behind the scenes. They just do the work. You're not supposed to know they're there. And like social media obviously gave them a platform to really showcase their work. But a lot of people gatekeep their teams because you just want it to look like, you know, you just walked out of bed and put this look together. But there are people that help. And I think it was so beautiful how you shined a light on them because it doesn't happen that often.
Well, and it's also, you know, they're deserving of it because it's also they were behind the scenes and that was intentional. It was like we're not talking about fashion yet. You know, that's not what this presidency is about, is what we look like, even though there's a strategy and there's intentionality to it. But in my mind, I always knew there would come a time when they needed to come out of the shadows. And there's also just the reality of, just like you said, we don't show up like this. So let's be clear. Yes. All right. I always say that's where even in the White House, I was like, there are up days. And when I'm up is hair and makeup. So let's get it all in. Because when I'm down, I'm not coming out of the house. Exactly. You know, it's like, let's go get Michelle Obama, right? Let's go find her and put on that face. And so like, there she is, you know. So it's also, you know, in this world of authenticity, like, let us not pretend. Like, I get my hair done and braided and there's somebody showing up like this. You know, I've learned how to do a lot of things on my own because when you have the privilege of being around folks who do the job, I'm watching. I'm like, how do you do that? It's like, okay, I'm gonna learn how to put that lash on just because I don't want to not be able to be Michelle Obama because I don't have 3 people in the house. I gotta be able to do it myself. But they save us time, you know? And so, no, I don't want any young girl thinking that having a beat face all the time, that it takes some work and some resources too. So let's not pretend that this is just the way it is. This, you know, and I can get a face done in 15 minutes, right? But when it's TV time, it takes a little bit longer. You got a powder, you got a concealer. There's work going on, right? So part of it is, you know, just the uncovering the truth that showing up as a woman in the world. Woo, Lord, y'all, and we got a bunch of men behind the camera. You don't even know.
It's work.
It's so much work for us to do this. My goodness. So yes, let's talk about it. What are we pretending?
Let's not pretend. Well, if we're not going to pretend, shout out to my team in the back. Hi, Rashida. Hi, Erin. I know that Rashida is laughing as soon as you said, I'm going to figure out how you get this eyelash on. I cannot tell you how many times she's been to the house and she's like, Tamira, you just do it like this. And I'm like, you know what? You'll be coming along. Because I have not figured out how to
I can do a strip lash.
Can you?
Wow, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I taught myself to.
Yeah, I've been because I'm a knitter handy like that. But sometimes I have to show up, and I can't. Like Carl's sick today. He had the flu. Now, luckily, Kinna helped, but I have to touch, because stuff happens. So I'm like, I can't not work because
Exactly.
I can't get my face together,
Right.
you know.
Still got to do a job.
And, you know, the difference is like girls today, they have all this social media where I'm like, Sasha.
All the tutorials,
Sasha
YouTube.
could be, and I get on them too. I'm like, now, how did they get that concealer? Like,
The highlight.
the baking.
Yes.
The girls, like, we didn't
have that
growing up. I mean, I didn't wear makeup until my husband was running for president, and I had to be on the cover of something. It's like, oh, I can't just show up like this.
The young girlies, they can do
know
their
how
makeup.
to do.
They can do it.
Do it all.
Yeah.
And I applaud them.
Yes.
And Sasha went through a phase where she was really into doing her makeup because she grew up in that culture.
Right.
And Barack was like, "That's a lot of makeup," and I was like, "Let her." Play, you know, just the minute she doesn't have time,
Right.
because that's coming when she gets to college, and I'm like, she's in, you know, she's a sophomore. She has time to beat her face.
Right.
She finished her homework.
Right.
You know, but you wind up shortcutting stuff. I was like, she'll get to a point where she can't afford it or doesn't have time.
She's gonna have 5 minutes to put it on.
And she has learned that girl barely wears makeup now. You know,
Time came.
Yeah.
You know, we talk about one of my all-time favorite looks, and it is the Sergio Hudson ox blood for this Biden inauguration.
Yeah.
I mean, the day that we broke the internet, we shut it completely down. You took every headline, and I remember sitting there with my mother, watching the entire scene, and I was like, "Oh my God, look at Miss Obama." And I don't post publicly; it's very rare. But I literally went back to my Instagram and found this post where I had all the pictures framed, and I'm like, yes, 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 yes. And then quickly we see Essence, we see Ebony, and it's just all over the world. How did you feel in that moment? Because we saw the hair.
Yeah.
You gave us the monochromatic look, and we were like, oh, yes, indeed. She is her.
Well, it's interesting because that, you know, if we remember what had just happened, right? January 6th had happened.
Right.
And the president was the president. And there was a question about everything, transition of power, what it meant, you know, calling something that was clearly one thing another. You know, everything was turned up on its head, and Biden had won, and we needed to go to the inauguration. But the Capitol was still surrounded by military. I mean, it was a protected military zone because of what had happened in January 6th. So it was a very serious time. COVID was just still, people were just coming out of it. I mean, we were living in a dystopic kind of time. And so for us, this inauguration and being there was important. It was a statement about our democracy and what it meant to have a peaceful and fair election and to have a transition of power that was peaceful, like it had been done all throughout the 400 years of this country, whether it was Republican or Democrat. Like that statement meant something. So we were once again focused on the seriousness of that time, and quite frankly, I didn't know what to expect, right? So my focus was we wanted to have limited staff with us that day, because our protective detail, if something were to go down, I didn't want to have anybody else's child in harm's way. So I wasn't bringing hair and makeup. I wasn't, no glove carry. I didn't even have an assistant. So my goal that day was, this look has to be easy, clean, elegant, warm. I wore boots with square heels because I was like, what if I have to really move? I need to be comfortable and clear and clean. So Yanae really blow dried my hair so that it would stay. I mean, that everybody was like, we won't see you again. And so everything is going to last through the wind, through the rain, through the snow, through the hail.
Yes.
You know, so it was a look out of practicality, because I was like, this is not a party. This this is not like a regular inauguration. This is about business, you know. So I think that's what was going through my mind, was the bigger political climate in our country and what this meant. And my theory of why things blow. Number one, Sergio's suits are just bad.
Bad to the bone.
To the bone. That belt, that coat.
I bought that belt the same day. Now, I couldn't get the color you had because you had sold it all out. But I got the black. I'll show you the picture when we're done.
And that is standard Sergio Hudson. His looks are just that. That crisp and clear and powerful. That's him. You know, so Sergio, dude, still doing it, right?
Yeah.
You put on a Sergio suit with a belt, and it's a statement, and it makes you feel like you're ready for anything. So thank you, Sergio, for that. And we were smart enough to pick it and go, yeah, that looks good. So that's another one of those. It's cute. Right? Let's wear it, right? But the thought of it making a statement, I think, so the look was good. And I think we hadn't been out in a while, right? I think that people hadn't seen us in the midst of all this because of COVID. I think with all the campaigning that happened over Zoom, right? There wasn't, so I think I like to think that it was sort of like, okay, there they are. They're still around, So I think it was probably a mix of emotions that led to kind of like, whoa, right? And then I was wearing a mask.
Yes.
Yep.
Right. So
and it didn't stop anything.
Nothing.
The look still looked.
It
was amazing.
It was looking.
And I think
looking.
Carl's attitude was, okay, all I got is eyes.
I got eyes.
Right. I think he
the
went
eyes
in.
did their job.
Yes.
Right. I think he went in on the eyes. But I'm like, because of that trust thing, when I sit down in the chair, I'm like, okay, you guys do what you're going to do. Because for me, as I've said, the clothes have to disappear, because there's work to do. And I have to trust that my team is doing. So a lot of times I get out of the chair, I don't even look in the mirror because I'm already working. As I'm sitting in the chair getting ready, I'm getting my mind ready for who I have to be present for,
Yes.
and the process of the putting the face on and all that, because I trust them, I can completely focus on the work at hand, who I'm standing in front of right now. I can't, as I said, I can't be worried about, somebody getting makeup on my shirt or a hymn not working. If I'm sitting down talking to a kid, I can't like have something so precious on that I can't hug, a veteran, right? I mean, it's still a job. And I treated it like a job. So the clothes I was wearing, it's like I have to show up in a certain look. I am the first lady. People are expecting first lady. So I'm not going to come out in jeans. That'd be disappointing. It's like going to see Santa Claus. He doesn't have his beard on, right? It's like you're first lady. So I understand what you're looking for. So I'm going to give you a little bit of that. But I also have to be able to work in it. I have to be able to do everything that moment calls for. If I have to if I'm with kids, my team would know I'm taking my shoes off. I'm getting on the ground with these little kids. So don't put me in something that you're going to be like, oh my God, because I don't care.
Yeah.
And that's what fashion does for us. It's our suit.
Yes.
It gives us the armor to allow us to show up, hopefully, and be comfortable in ourselves so that the clothes disappear and we can be here to do the work. And I think whether you work in an office or work with kids, I think we're all trying to find that thing for us that allows us to do the work that we have to do and do it well.
Right.
And First Lady for me was a job just like anything else. I treated it that way. I went to work, and I was working for the country. And it wasn't about me, it was about the person in front of me. So I think as professionals, you guys understand that.
Yes.
That's very true. One of the things in the look that caught my attention was your hair journey. So in the book, you talk about some of the pressure aligned to like, I have straight hair and then I'm going to embrace my natural curls, which by the way, P.S. and by the way, I'm like, I want that, right? Like just this aspirational hair to then like playing around with other styles that feel fun, right?
Yeah.
And then embracing braids. And so one of the questions I had for you was, what was that journey like to get to the braids and feeling comfortable in that? Because we all know in spaces, things that are very cultural to our being are not as widely accepted. So I'd love to hear some of your thoughts.
Yeah. Generationally, I'm where all of us are, and a lot of this is generational. I think we grew up in a time where we felt like being a professional. Our grandmothers, our mothers told us, you had to press your hair, straighten your hair, wear hose. There were, so a lot of it is generational, and we all experienced that. There was a professionalism that you felt. And again, we're not crazy. And that's how we're received in the world, too. People, it's like, let me make my hair quiet so that you can see me.
Yes.
Let me just take this out of if it's not in your comfort zone, so that I can get this job and do this work, right? And up until the time I was First Lady, I was like everyone in the corporate sector. My first job was in a corporate law firm, and then I worked in the city government as an assistant to the mayor. And then when I worked in a nonprofit organization that I was running and set the cultural for, things were a little bit different, but I was still fundraising and meeting with high-end donors. And so there's the uniform for that, and on and on and on. And then, I'm First Lady, and I understood that was not the time to make a statement about hair. We were still trying to get the country used to 2 Black people.
Exactly.
Right? So it's
Not
like,
too much at once.
Right. It's like, right. And it's just sort of like, okay, half the people believe my husband wasn't born in this country, didn't have the degree he had. Well, I'm not going to make the braid statement just now. I don't think the country is ready for that, right? And that's just the truth. Is it's much a strategy as everything else. It's like we have too much to do to make hair a part of the conversation.
That's right.
Right. And again, that was at the time. But I understood that the conversation needed to be had. I understood that as the first Black First Lady in that position, that, experimenting in that space was important. So the natural hair piece was like, I'm on vacation, right? I don't have hair and makeup with me to straighten my hair. So my hair is going to be what it is, right? So it's okay. It's also later in the term. People got to know me, right? So now maybe you're not so, we're not so other.
Right.
Now it's just hair, right? And I think that, and I think when white folks say, well, we don't have an issue with people's hair, it's sort of like, well, do you? You might not once you know someone.
Right.
All right? The person who is in the office, you might think, well, you're still going to wonder, well, how'd you do that? Right? You might not fire them, you might not hire them, but there are some biases that we've all experienced. Again, we're not crazy. We understand the codes and the cues. So no, it's not across the board. And I'm sure if you do a good job at work, which is what I encourage young people to do, first and foremost, be good at what you do. And then if you're good at what you do, that buys you a bit more flexibility to do what you want to do, right? And I think that's true for everyone, right? If you're good at what you do, nobody's going to fire you because you came with pants on, right?
Right.
Because people just want folks who are delivering, right? And I felt like we delivered, for the country. So now I've got some credit. And now it's important for all those young girls and for all the women in our community to understand that our braids, all the things, the choices that we make about ourselves are valid and beautiful. And there are reasons why each of us make a choice about how we're wearing our hair, and it's personal. So I understood and knew that I was going to go back to braids anyway, just because I'm trying to swim and play tennis, and I don't have hair and makeup. I am not straightening my hair. I love
Relax on the heat, give your hair a break.
Give your hair a break, protective hairstyles. It's all that we discuss. So I knew I was going to go back to braids just for my own freedom. And I knew it was important for me to show up at that portrait unveiling in braids. I wanted to make that statement in the White House. I was always going to go back in that direction because I think a lot of us, when we're not working, a lot of us are wearing braids and protective styles. I'm no different. I've got my hair in braids now because I'm not going to have my team around me, and I don't want to have to worry about my hair. And I love to exercise and swim and go in the ocean and do a whole bunch of things. So I think it's important for me in my role to have that conversation publicly for all of us. Hopefully with the message of there is no message that we are trying to deliver with our hair.
Right.
Really, truly. Maybe somebody just want to give it a break. But it's not that deep or complicated. It's just like and again, this issue isn't unique to women of color. There are white women who are bleaching and putting extensions in and going blonde and doing a whole bunch of things to be accepted professionally. This is not unique to us, but all I can talk about is my experience and my challenge. I'm not going to pretend that I know yours or to try to tell your story. All I can do is tell you my story, and that is my story. Braids are a part of the spectrum of beauty that we have access to.
Yes.
It is, I think it's really, really wonderful how much we can do with and to our hair and have it look beautiful and professional, and the work and the craftsmanship that it takes to do it. Oh my God.
Yes.
It's talent. It's art.
Your fishtail braid from the DNC, all the things we are falling in love.
Jerry.
Yes.
And she told me that tail was a mistake. I was like, I don't know how it was. But I don't know what she was doing back there because I was focusing on my speech. I was thinking about what I was going to say in the moment, and she's back there, and I was like, "You done?
Here we
Good."
are.
And I didn't find out afterwards that she was like, "I didn't like it." I was like,
what?
Girl,
It was perfect. No, it was
We
perfect.
loved it.
Yeah, we loved it.
I did too.
Yes.
Once I looked at it after my speech, I was like,
That was confession. Quick confession that before we interviewed you the first time, I had braids, and I took my braids out because I didn't want to have the braids when we were doing the interview.
well, you should have asked.
We could have all showed up with braids. We could have all showed
But
up.
that's the truth. We all are so conscious about our hair. And although we love braids, we're like, is this the right time?
Right.
Can I
Yeah.
relax and just be myself? And, and it's something that a lived experience that only we know what that feels like.
That's right. That's right. And also, I work for myself, right? And so, what advice do I give young people? First of all, your job is your job. So you better figure out what standards are acceptable in your, there's nothing wrong with people having some kind of rules, boundaries, and guidelines,
Right.
I think we want to do the work to expand it so that people understand that hairstyles, that's a personal decision, but there are limits to life.
Right.
There's just some things that you can and can't do, and so you got to figure out what battle to pick. As we all get older, I live in a point in my life where how I show up is totally up to me. I do not have a boss. I work for myself. So I do what I feel like doing, and not everybody has that
Freedom.
luxury or freedom.
That's right.
And what the Crown Act is trying to do is open that up and to educate people of other races to understand that we want to expand the definition of what is beautiful, acceptable, professional.
Yes.
Because some of those limits just don't make sense. They're based on standards that are just not true in the world. So it's a broadening of possibility.
Yes.
But that sometimes there are things you you can't do.
That's right.
You know, sometimes there are limits, and that's why you work hard.
Yeah.
You know, because you're trying to earn your way to a little more self-control, self-determination, and sometimes that comes with age.
Yes.
But I am so proud of this generation of young girls because I think they've moved the needle for us.
Absolutely.
You know, they've led in this in terms of embracing their natural hair, going on social media, talking about their journeys. I think that's where they're leading in this way. And I want to be a part of supporting them in their courage and bravery and to say, yeah, all right, I'm going to do me too.
I'm going to do it too. Miss Obama, spending time with you this evening has just been fantastic. We want to be able to celebrate your birthday. We hope that you have a wonderful time with your family.
Thank you.
21 again?
Yeah, let's call it 21. Let's call it. Well, we're only as old as we feel.
We are only as old as we feel. It has certainly been my honor, my privilege to spend some time
guys are
with you this
amazing.
evening.
You are. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for just representing us in a way that with so much class and style and grace, but having you in, you know, as an example, it just, we see ourselves through you, you know? So thank you so much for all that you do for us and not forgetting about us.
Never.
Yes.
I would say thank you today for just being incredible. I knew that you were like an awesome person, but when you came in here today and dropping these nuggets on us and sharing with us like authentically, and we feel it from your heart, like there is something about that. And I am just amazed that I'm living in this moment right now and just so grateful for it all. So just thank you for showing up and being exactly who I thought you would be.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, Kinna.
Y'all, really?
It's just real. It's so real. It's so real. Thank you.
I told my mom, we were having a conversation before this, and my mom said, well, Miss Obama is just a little girl from the South Side. She said, you let her know that you're a little girl from the North End of Detroit.
Yeah.
And, you know, because of her, that you have been able to run so much further. And I mean it when I say you may not recognize it, but blessings are just falling off of you. And they're so plentiful that they're able to birth brand new gardens. And we know how much you loved your garden, right? And so now that garden really lives on through all of us. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you for everything. And to everybody at home, if you have not already grabbed your copy of the look, please consider purchasing at a local indie, and where books are sold, you will not be disappointed. There's a gorgeous shot that's right down the middle of the book that represents Miss Obama and Kamala Harris, I believe during one of the most powerful moments in the book. And certainly want to encourage you all to get that. If you haven't already subscribed to Storehouse and Friends, we look forward to seeing you all soon. Miss Obama, is there anything you'd like to?
I want to just thank you for this space. I look forward to these conversations that we have and to be able to share it with the community of women that have been watching and supporting and praying and loving us through all of this. So it is a gift to represent, like still not doing anybody any favors. You know, I am representing the truth of who this audience is. It's just a fact. It's not an exception. It's not unusual. This is the standard of how we show up in the world, especially when we're given a chance. Yes. So if I'm reflecting that to the world, then that's an easy job. So I'm grateful to you all. I'm grateful for you all making this space, and we will do it again. And I think the next time we plan on trying to do it live.
Oh yes, we will sell out in arena.
Martina,
You all heard it first at home. Next event in person live. More on that later.
Yeah.
Let's figure that out.
Yes.
Stay tuned.
David, you heard that. Thank you. Thank you all.
Love you guys. Go get the love.